Mamadou. Firstly, let me thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. First things first, let me ask you, why do you do what you do?
I do it out of passion. I think you want to leave this world better when you leave than you found it. And I've kind of spent most of my life trying to always look for solutions, to see how I can fix problems. I was born in Africa and I arrived in Europe and I saw the gap. And, for me, it's always been like, okay, things can be better. So let's always make sure we improve them. And if we can change the world and make it a better place and do good and do well, why not, right?
Most definitely. What brought you here to the Blockchain Summit today?
Basically, I spoke on the Blockchain for Good earlier this morning, right? So it was around blockchain and social impact. And I'm a strong believer of the power of blockchain to really activate sustainable change, right? Especially because, it's a full decentralized way of, empowering people, but also validating transactions in an environment where things are generally highly centralized, right? And where you end up trusting a central party that may not be so trustworthy, right? So in my context, I believe that what has been plaguing a lot of emerging countries, right, was the lack of trust in general, right, in those countries or in their leaders or in those companies. And if you can now leverage on blockchain to kind of create that trust environment, then you put everybody on a level playing field. And that's really why it's so fascinating.
Brilliant. And just for those who are watching that won't know, could you just tell us a bit more about your current role within the blockchain industry?
Sure. So I'm the founder of Ubuntu Coin, right? So what we've done, we've set up, it's a digital asset that is 100% backed by gold. So we have two tokens, right? So the point was to say, okay, you have one token that is backed by gold, and then how do you ensure ethical gold extraction, right? And then we have another token that is a security token where people can invest, and we use those funds to pre-finance, artisanal mining, small-scale mining, and in exchange of gold at a discount at a later stage. And then we pass on that discount to the token community so that they can get gold at a discount, and they can also get the profit margins of the gold that or the digital gold that we're going to be selling. But the most important part around it is we democratize gold. The main challenge about access to gold, whether you're in Africa or anywhere in the world, is that the barriers to entry are extremely high. Like in Switzerland, the minimum transaction you can do in gold is like $150,000 or something, which keeps away so many people from that opportunity, right? And what we do is like for as low as 5 cents, you can buy Godol, which is our 100% gold-backed token, right? And then have gold stored on your phone and then benefit from the appreciation of gold. What people don't know is that over the past 40 years, the average growth of gold has been between 10 and 20% depending on the years, right? And since 2001, it's been on average 20% per year, right? So what we believe is that's a great way to create wealth, and by leveraging on blockchain, we make it accessible to anybody on the planet, regardless of their purchasing power.
Brilliant, so absolutely amazing. So it kind of brings me to my next question as well. So within your project, what would you say? How are you disrupting the relevant industry with your solutions? So how do you feel what you're doing is going to affect?
So we first, we tackle two major problems, right? Which one is financial inclusion. The other one is poverty trap, right? So if you take the global economy, 1.7 billion adults don't have access to a bank account. In Africa, 800 million people don't have a bank account, but they all have a mobile phone, right? So why don't we then make access to the digital asset on their phone and let them trade and transact? And then participate to the global economy so that they can effectively have those digital assets as an asset to trade and to get funding or to access goods. But beyond that, you have 3 billion people on the planet who live with less than $2.50 a day, right? And people would think, oh yeah, it's a poor people problem, it's an emerging market issue, at their poor, that's their fault. But guess what? In the US, the millennials, the total debt accumulated by the millennials today in America is $1 trillion, which is bigger than any generation ever in that country. So it's not just about feeling included in the global economy, that you might be included, but your situation may not allow you to participate, right? And that's where we realize, okay, how do we address this issue? And why I'm talking about the millennial, is that they're the future of humanity. That's the generation that's going to take over. So if you kind of strangle them, you're going to have major problems down the road, right? And when it comes to Africa, by 2035, there will be 2 billion Africans in the planet, and 7 out of 10 youth in 2040 born will be born out of Africa. So for me, it was a great way to say, okay, how do we address this? And then you realize that gold actually is the perfect asset to hedge, because in history of banking and finance, the only way to escape poverty is through an asset, right? Even when you go to a bank, they ask you for collateral, right? So let's give them the best possible asset that will help them escape poverty and be included. And as you do that, now you leverage on blockchain, you digitize gold. People are not going to carry Dory bars, right? Blockchain allows you to kind of create this tamper-proof, immutable transaction and validation. So let's leverage on technology and let's make it the infinitesimal size so that regardless of how rich or poor you are, you can get in the game and hedge yourself and build a minimum of wealth and share it. And, our motto is about inclusion and impact. So 10% of transaction fees that are proceeded when people buy the digital asset or when they transact with one another go back to social impact. And a portion of it goes to artisanal miners and small-scale mining and the families for education and healthcare. Another portion is actually left within the communities that are transacting. Let's say Malta, for instance, or which part of the UK are you from? Which part of London?
I'm from South London.
South London. Okay, so we can delimitate South London as I would say, online jurisdiction, measure all the volume of transactions that are being done there, right? And 5% of all transactions done in South London stay in South London, so that the South London token community can use those funds to start fixing local problems. And we leverage on distributed or domestic organizations for that. It's a way to empower people back to take their destiny at hand and to make a difference without having to wait for the government to get things done. Because there's so much frustration today around it. So power back to the people in a way that they grow together. And that's why the name Ubuntu is so important. Ubuntu means I am because we are. And if you look at Ubuntu, you find it also in Zimbabwe, because it's a name you find in South Africa, but you find it also in Rwanda, they say Umubuntu. You find it in DRC, they say Abantu. Because the original name, the value and the meaning of Ubuntu means humanity. So Ubuntu coin means humanity coin, right? And that's really the model behind it, where we are all interconnected. And what is blockchain at the end of the day? Blockchain is a decentralized validation of a transaction or of a product or anything else. It means that blockchain means that I only exist because others can validate. And that's how it translates so well with Ubuntu that says I am because we are. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So what got you into blockchain and crypto to start with, and how long would you say you've been in the industry professionally?
So the thing is that I've been in finance all my career, right? Finance and investment. So started my career with KPMG in Paris, and then was in investment banking with BNP Paribas. Doing mergers and acquisitions, government advisory, project finance, sector restructuring. And at the time, it was funny because many of my friends, from the business schools I came up, went to London and New York, to Goldman Sachs, etc., Lehman Brothers that actually tanked in 2008. And I chose Africa. right? I chose emerging markets because I felt if I'm going to do finance, I want to do finance for good, right? And funny enough, after my stay with BNP Paribas, the World Bank approached me to come and work, with them, and I was basically leading investments with IFC actually, which is a sister company of the World Bank, in telecom media technologies for Sub-Saharan Africa. And at the time, I made the first investment in the world in mobile money, mobile banking. So for me, finance is consubstantial of who I am and what I do. And I've always looked at it as a way to make a difference. And after the World Bank, actually, I was approached by GE, General Electric, as I was managing director in charge of investment and project finance for Sub-Saharan Africa for for all the subsidiaries of the conglomerate: power, water, mining, oil and gas, transportation, healthcare. And then after that, I decided something is wrong. Because the way finance is working today, and I got very frustrated over time with this short-term thinking, right? With this quarterly shareholder return, this whole, how much are we milking the whole thing, right? And it's not necessarily GE or World Bank or anything. It's that we needed, for me, there was a big need to reinvent finance, to reinvent the way we could create value, not so much from an extractive point of view, where you extract wealth from the ground, from the company, from the people, but from a creative way, right? Or contributive way, where you bring value, right? And then combining financial and social return was essential for me. So I started looking at ways to do that. So I started my firm, Ubuntu Group, where we had investment advisory, Ubuntu Capital. So we've worked with major clients like the African Development Bank, the European Union, with the European Investment Bank, and some sovereign wealth funds, etc., to help them through their investments in different areas and for impact. But it was still not enough. Something was missing, right? And then I bumped into blockchain, and it was a revolution. It was like, okay, now we're talking, right? And I saw that as a great opportunity. First as an African, right? People keep on saying, yeah, Africa is poor. You remember this hopeless continent quote from The Economist that killed me at the time. And then, right? And then I thought, okay, but wait a minute. Africa is poor, but it's extremely rich. Africa is actually wealthy in natural resources, right? Platinum, coltan, gold, lithium, you name it, right? So, what if we made those mineral resources a currency? What if we use it as an asset we could trade with digitally? And what if we put it in the hands of everyone, not just in Africa, but around the world? And then that's what the solution that blockchain was solving for. And since then, I never went back. It's been a journey about making this dream happen.
That's it. Brilliant. What would you say is an integral part to building innovative blockchain products?
I think it starts with the people themselves, integrity. The power of blockchain also starts with the people who drive it. As much as it allows, transparency, immutability, etc., it's important to do it from the right place. And I think that's what also makes Bitcoin so powerful, right? The ideology behind it when it started was to address a problem of centralization, right? And I think if you started from the right place, it's important, therefore, because then you can do the smart contracts in a way that serves your mission, your vision, your purpose, right? Then you can structure the blockchain itself in a way that is fair and transparent, right? So the other element is that people tend to underestimate is people look at it more as a technology. They forget the user experience, right? If we put the user at the center about what difference you're making in their lives, that's where you're gonna have the best product, right? And I think that's very important. Of course, the other element in a blockchain project is the team. I am because we are, right? You can't achieve alone. You need to surround yourself and not necessarily with only the best, but with the people who believe the most, right? Yes, they need to be credible from a technical point of view, but two good teams, the one that will have the most chance to succeed is the one that has the most faith in what they're doing and the impact of what they're doing.
I have a saying I use back home. I tell people that teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly, teamwork makes the dream work,
Yeah.
right? And that's essential.
Brilliant. What do you think is the primary challenges facing blockchain projects today? Or it may be something you've come across yourself.
Look, I mean, the primary challenges, what I see as every entrepreneur will tell you is funding, right? And on top of that, you are involved in an industry that is highly marginalized and highly criticized because it's highly misunderstood. So I think the advocacy part for getting people to understand what difference it can really make in their life, despite the noise, despite whatever people call scams, etc., will really give it its the credibility and the impact it deserves. And also the other challenge is, again, like I said, putting the client or the user first is the adoption, the usage, right? Think of internet. Before, let's say in the early 90s, the main challenge of the internet, it was a black screen. Only geeks were there typing stuff like code, etc., and communicating this way, right? And it sounded like an alien stuff for people. But something changed. It was World Wide Web. By the moment World Wide Web was introduced, now people could then start to use it without having to think of an IP address and things like that. And I think that's where that cusp with blockchain, where to make it mainstream, you're going to have to start thinking like a developer. You will have to think like a user, or like somebody who knows nothing. And I made a point myself to not necessarily for a while get into having a wallet, a crypto. Why? Because I wanted to put myself in the shoes of what is it that I would want if I wanted to use this. So we've set up a social media platform where people would basically not even have to think about a wallet, about a crypto key. I mean, my mother is not going to think about a crypto key with it. Come on, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've created this social platform that is called Tribe One, where when you create your profile and you have a KYC, face recognition, etc., then you have an embedded wallet that comes with your profile. And where you have coins also that are made available so that you can start trading. And you don't think anymore about, okay, I'm going to an exchange for this and that.
Yes.
And that's really where we allocated a lot of our thoughts and give people that chance to create a community. Okay, who are the people I interact or transact with? Then they can build a community of interaction and transactions, and then they exchange within that community. And I think that's the next big thing. And the corporate adoption is essential, but we can see it's coming, right? Once corporates will, and they've started massively, right? Embrace the technology. For instance, in our case, we have a track and trace technology where the gold can be traced from ground to vault, all on the blockchain, which gives full transparency and comfort to investors as to where their gold is, how is it being managed, and what's the time for it to get to the vault, etc. That's the power of things, so that people now see the value. It will be a problem until people keep on explaining blockchain. If you have to explain it, then you're having the wrong narrative. At the end of the day, it's been driven by techies and who speak a techies language. But techies are like what? 2% of the population. Yeah. So if you speak a language just for yourself, how do you want the 98% to get it? Just get a product that works, then take it.
Yes, brilliant. I've just got one more question for you, so I'll take up quite a bit of your time.
problem. It's a pleasure.
So, what are your views on the future? We've touched through basically on it, but what is your views of the future of blockchain and other cryptocurrencies, and what industries do you feel will be most disrupted through the possible adoption over the next 10 years?
So, look, I mean, what I think will be the most disruptive in blockchain is going to be decentralized finance. Why? Because today, and maybe because I'm a banker by training, an investor, etc., is that what you have a world where money is centralized with a few VCs, a few banks, etc., and where you have a world of millions of entrepreneurs who are scrambling for the same pot of money. Why? Because it's a linear way. Now, think of crowdfunding, right? It's a whole different way to fund corporations. But now, if you put those companies, those startups on the blockchain, you don't need to be next to them. You don't need to do a due diligence if you can trace all their activities and audit them. That will be the revolution, in my opinion. And our foundation, the Ubuntu Foundation, which receives some of those tokens, is committed to put together a whole platform that will decentralize finance and give the opportunity for you in South London, for my grandmother in Cameroon, for somebody in Peru who have a great idea to play on the same level playing field like the kid in the Silicon Valley. Why? Because money becomes decentralized and anybody who believes in it, as long as they can trace what he does with the money and that the product is valuable, can fund it. That's where the revolution starts.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.